According to Kevin Bales, a modern-day slavery expert and abolitionist, slavery means the loss of free will. It means that violence will be used to maintain control over the slave, and it means the slave will be exploited, normally in some form of economic activity, but possibly for sex or even as an object of conspicuous consumption. Slaves may be kidnapped or captured, tricked into slavery, but their lives will be controlled through violence and they will be exploited. According to Free the Slaves, slavery happens everywhere, but it is not legal anywhere. It is estimated that 27 million people are being illegally enslaved throughout the world today, bringing in $32 billion worldwide annually. The United States, the land of the free, is not innocent in this global crime. The U.S. has 60,000 victims in slavery today. According to the Polaris Project, each year about 17,000 people are trafficked into the United States. 50% of these slaves are in the commercial sex industry. The other 50% are in agriculture, domestic service, and manufacturing. For 6 months, Kansas City Star reporters investigated human trafficking throughout the world and in Kansas City. They then published a 5-part award-winning series that exposed the horrors of modern-day slavery. One of these reporters was Mike McGraw.
Every year, the U.S. State Department does a report in which they grade every other country in the world. How are they doing on fighting human trafficking? And the one country that we didn't grade was ourselves. And we wondered why that was. And we started looking deeper and deeper and found that, gee, in some ways the U.S. doesn't have a lot of moral ground on which to grade other countries but not give itself a grade. And the more we looked, the more we found that it was time to give them a grade, and we gave them a grade, and it wasn't the best grade.
According to the Polaris Project, an anti-slavery organization, human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery where people profit from the control and exploitation of others. Kansas City is one of the worst offenders. The Kansas City Star described it as an emerging hub of human trafficking activity.
And we knew that human trafficking was a problem on either coast, California and along the East Coast, and according to what we had read, along the borders, primarily the Mexican border. But we had heard rumors that human trafficking was picking up steam in the Midwest, partly because Kansas City is at the crossroads of major interstate highways, railroads, and we started looking into it. And as I looked into it, I also found that Kansas City is also the hub, the home, of 2 federal government airlines that are used to deport illegal aliens, illegal immigrants, undocumented workers, whatever you want to call them. And we knew for a fact that some human trafficking victims are mistakenly deported back to the country where they came from, which really is a violation of U.S. law.
Breaking Out is a human trafficking victim rescue organization that assists and works with law enforcement in the United States and internationally. Breaking Out's founder, James Barnes, has been a member of multiple human trafficking task forces that combat modern-day slavery at its source.
I've rescued girls from as young as 9 all the way up to 45 years old. The biggest thing I've found is that there's no particular type of profile. When I say that, I mean fat, skinny, short, tall, black, white. There's just no particular type that is targeted. The American victims that I found were there because of fraud. A lot of fraud and coercion, where they thought they were going to do something else, and they were tricked and ended up being sold. Some of the foreign girls were captured because they thought they were coming to the United States. So they were paying off their debt in a sense, which obviously was never payable off. It is just a way to trick them into doing what they wanted them to do. Taken by force is actually the least common method that traffickers use. It is more fraud and coercion.
Truman Medical Center has a program that specially correlates to human trafficking victims. Jennifer Green is the manager of this program and lead sexual assault nurse examiner for Truman.
I had gone from the ICU down to the emergency department. I had been there for about 2 weeks and was on orientation at St. Luke South. And we received a 15-year-old patient that was unconscious due to inebriation. And she was unconscious. Her father had gone after her at a party because she wasn't answering her cell phone. And so when she didn't answer, he went ahead and found her, and she was unconscious, and he was livid, as most dads would be. He wasn't able to rouse her, and that made him even more angry, and so he picked her up and threw her in the shower, fully clothed. And that didn't wake her up, and then he got scared. And so he called EMS, and they brought her to our facility. It took her a couple of hours. Typically we'll water them, and watch their airway and that sort of thing to make sure that they're okay. And make sure they don't vomit and cause issues there. And it was a couple hours later that she kind of came to and let us know that she had been violated by a specific guy at the party. And everybody froze because we didn't have a forensic program, and I knew enough to know that there was something special that needed to happen to her and for her, but I didn't know what it was. And it was the most helpless feeling ever to take care of ICU patients that are circling the drain, and if I can do that, but then I can't take care of a victim of violence, and I just swore at that moment that it would never happen again. And so I went through a 40-hour forensic training, and then from there, it's kind of one of those things you don't dabble in, and you don't just do it a couple times like a year. It's something that you have to be fully committed to. Because when you're testifying in court, one of the questions they ask you are, well, how many cases have you had? How often do you perform these exams? How competent are you? And that's kind of how I got roped into the deal. She was in my room, it was my patient, and I just swore I'd never be in that position where I couldn't take care of somebody.
It's not terribly difficult to identify a victim. We've seen a lot because traffickers will take the victims to the hospital because it's their money and it's their product. They don't want something to happen to their product and profit. What you would find in the medical field, the trafficker, whether female or male, will be speaking for the victim. So they would say, the victim doesn't understand English, Spanish, or whatever language the hospital uses. And the trafficker would say, talk to me and I will talk to them. That's the first sign. Secondly, you're going to see that the victim is going to act like a normal victim would, not looking you in the eyes, kind of looking down, hesitant or scared, because the victim is scared of the trafficker. Then you want to look for a mark on the victim, because some traffickers actually brand girls. The mark tells which trafficking ring she belongs to. It could be somewhere by her toes, fingers, or wrists. It won't look like a normal birthmark or a tattoo, though, not a butterfly or a flower or anything like that. It would be something out of the ordinary, maybe a number.
Not making eye contact is a big one. Glued to their cell phone and pressing that I have so much time, I need to be out of here, I need to go, and receiving frequent text messages and frequent calls and being more interested in that phone than they are in their own care. If they don't have ID, that's a big one. If they don't know what city they're in, or not really sure about the geographics of the Kansas City area, if they're completely unaware of the resources that we have available. No insurance, obviously, but a lot of the patients that we serve don't have insurance. That's not a huge indicator. I'm just talking about you start bundling all this stuff together. They don't specifically come in saying that they have sexual assault issues or anything like. They'll come in and they'll say, they'll come in with untreated, long-standing medical problems where they haven't received care for long periods of time. Alcohol and drug addiction is a big one as a coping mechanism for what they're dealing with. If they have problems with English, or if that's not their first language, and if they have somebody with them that's doing all the translating for them, that's a huge red flag for me. If they decline an interpreter, which is their right, so we do screen everybody independently without anyone with them. That's our policy. That way we can kind of get to getting an interpreter in there and getting from them without any kind of worry about retaliation or threat of harm and injury. So we'll do that. If they have a noticeably older boyfriend, or if they're young and they have knowledge of or talk about sexual experiences that are way beyond what they should know at that time, lying about their age, injuries that are inconsistent with what they're talking about, And then we also have a lot of patients where they're very forthcoming and honest and upfront about who they are, what they do, and they've been involved.